Many people overly fixate on corrective exercises for improving anterior pelvic tilt. But what many overlook is picking the right strengthening exercises to help improve their ability to own a better posture and spine position and train themselves to be strong in it and pattern that. In this video, I'm going to show you my favorite exercises for weight training with anterior pelvic tilt and what you can do to help train yourself into a better posture. So with anterior pelvic tilt, a lot of people think of it as a muscular problem where you have elongated hamstrings in the back, you have a tight low back, you have weak core muscles. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as if you have a forwardly shifted center of gravity, meaning that your weight is being pushed more forward within your pelvis and your upper body is responding by tilting back so that way you can get your center of mass to not fall totally forward. This forward center of gravity can develop for many different reasons that I address in other videos, but the real key for restoring this anterior pelvic tilt to more of a neutral position is to learn how to stack the head, the rib cage, and pelvis and do that in a way that facilitates, yes, some of those muscles we talked about earlier, like the abs and the hamstrings contracting to bring the pelvis into more of a posterior tilt, but also being able to maintain this stacked position. Because if we simply just trained hamstring strength and we trained core strength, that wouldn't necessarily fix the root cause of the issue, which is that this person is effectively forward within their center of gravity. We need to learn how to stack and find our heels more effectively and not have so much of our weight being placed forward onto our forefoot relative to our rear foot. We want to train the genuine ability to feel our center of gravity shifted back, meaning that we have our posteriorly tilted pelvis stacked on top of our foot. We're able to find our heels and we're able to keep our rib cage down. So the most important thing for doing this is learning how to, as we say, stack. I'm going to show you an introductory video on stacking so that way you understand what it feels like. And keep this in mind with almost any weight training exercise that you do if the goal is to improve your posture. Honestly, guys, this stacking concept is over half of it. If you can do this really well, then chances are it's going to carry over to other exercises and you're going to keep patterning this, and this is going to carry over to your daily life as well. So let me show you a couple different types of exercises that will allow you to improve this stack and implement it within something like a squat. Trevor, I just want you to stand with your feet relatively hip width apart, and I want you to feel the foot contacts of your heel, particularly your inner heel, your first metatarsal head, and not losing the outside foot. So also feel a little bit of your fifth metatarsal head right there. And that's just going to give us a stable base of support. Now, you're going to bend your knees very, very slightly, just maybe 5–10% max. And now I want you to put your hands on your hips. And imagine your pelvis is a bowl of water. You don't want it to spill out the front too much. You don't want it to spill out the back. You want it to be nice and neutral. So depending on whether someone has in their resting posture an anterior or posterior tilt of the pelvis, you may need to adjust. Most people will have more of an anterior tilt, so you might want to cue them to bring their pelvis a little bit under them. On that same note of getting that posterior tilt, as we'll talk about in a second, you want the posterior tilt coming from the position of the rib cage being in the right position. So I don't want any tension in the glutes or really even like the six-pack abs as they tuck. I want it to happen because of a natural exhale. So exhaling will naturally bring the rib cage down, and you'll see how that works in a second. The next thing we're going to do is get the rib cage in a good position. So we know that the normal human spine curve has that S-shaped curve. So we have a little bit of lumbar lordosis and extension, a little bit of thoracic kyphosis and flexion, and our head has a little bit of lordosis as well. So we're going to go after a little bit of the kyphosis here. So I'm going to have Trevor keeping his eyes at straight ahead, horizon level. He's going to reach his arms out in front of him, very slightly protracting the shoulders, getting a little bit of space between his scapula and his spine. He doesn't want to reach so much that his sternum depresses. He just wants to stay tall and get that nice reach. Now, if I notice that Trevor now becomes a little bit too extended through his low back as he does this, I'm going to cue him to exhale and bring his rib cage down underneath him. Now, you can tell that Trevor looks pretty good in this position right here. His head is stacked over his ribs, which are stacked over his hips and his feet. This is what I will say is the stack. I'll tell my clients, I want you to sear this into your brain, and I want you to really memorize what this feels like, because these same principles apply to so many different exercises like we're about to show you. Now let me show you how we can apply this to something simple like a goblet squat, because we're not always going to be able to just reach like this. But if I have Trevor hold that in a normal kettlebell goblet position like this, I can still have him get all of the same things we just talked about. So foot pressures are there, very slight unlocking of the knees, eyes at horizon level. Now here is how we get the rib cage and pelvis stack. Take the weight, still hold it close, but reach the elbows a little bit further away from you, just a tiny bit. And you'll see that his sternum stays up and his ribs come back a little bit, and that exhale sets the rib cage in a good position. Now, Trevor can inhale and descend by unlocking at the knees and going down, and he can exhale coming back up, maintaining that slight reach of the elbows. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have a position where he's reaching the weight away from him as he pushes back. That's going to throw off his center of mass a lot. So he wants to make sure that the weight's staying close. It's just that elbow reach that's going to give him that protraction. Now when we do it in a hinge, it's a little bit easier because we can get that full reach. So everything would apply as normal. So slight unlocking of the knees, pelvis is neutral, reach those arms and get that full exhale. Now the tricky part with this though is maintaining this together as he goes into the hinge. So he's gonna make sure he gets that forward folding and pushing his hips back. But you can tell that he still has maintained that relationship really nicely. So this is mostly flat, little bit of rounding here, but eyes are at 6 feet in front of him, and then he can come up, press through those foot contacts, and make sure he ends in that hip extended position. Now there's obviously 1,000 different row variations, but we're gonna choose this chest supported row because it helps illustrate pretty clearly visually what we want in the stack here. So Trevor would allow his head to be hanging off of the bench a little bit, but supported by the pad, so that way he can maintain a little bit of that natural lordosis of the neck, and his low back will naturally be in that position where it has a little bit of the lordosis simply because of that prone position. And all he's going to do is very gently reach the weights away from him. Not so much to where his sternum depresses and his back rounds like that, just a tiny bit of a reach, just maybe like 10–15%. Now all he's going to do is maintain that as he pulls his elbow in. Usually when we row, we want to lead with the elbow, not the scap, because that's going to have us lose that congruency of the scapula on that rib cage. So he's going to lead with the elbow, and the scapula will take care of itself in most cases. Now I know a lot of you are going to be tempted to do something that I'm going to encourage you not to, and that is when you're lifting or you're doing something like rows or presses, you're going to want to stand up tall and squeeze your shoulders back, and that's going to allow you to then be taller. That's not necessarily the best way to go about things, because if we try to squeeze our shoulders back and or sort of get taller to flatten out our back, that is going to end up just extending us more. This happens because as we squeeze the shoulders back, that's going to push our rib cage up and further exaggerate this anterior tilt. Also, trying to stand tall often results in people also just moving more through the low back. So the key is to get tall, keep your sternum up, but make sure that you're getting a nice exhale before you go into a lift to set that stack of the head over the rib cage, over the pelvis. Here's a way that you can implement that within a row that will still help you very effectively target these back muscles to improve that, but also not go so far to the point where you're just feeding that anterior pelvic tilt. These types of exercises are exactly the type of thing that I include within my brand new symmetric strength training program. This program is designed for anyone to be able to do because it's individualized and has an assessment that will help you understand your own limitations, and then you will get a program based around those things. It addresses your overall movement limitations, but also your asymmetries from side to side. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it down below in the description.